Welcome to episode 64 of the Princeton Podcast, sponsored by the municipality of Princeton, encouraging civic participation and amplifying the voices that shape our community. In this episode, Mayor Mark Freda is joined by Princeton Councilman David Cohen for an in-depth discussion about the municipality's newly launched Vision Zero initiative, an ambitious plan aimed at eliminating traffic fatalities and serious injuries in Princeton. Councilman Cohen outlines the core components of Vision Zero, including safer roadway design, public education, enforcement, and post-crash care, all centered around a safe systems approach to improve safety for all who use Princeton's streets. This episode highlights several ways residents can get involved, such as using the See Click Fix app to report unsafe conditions and taking the Vision Zero Safety Pledge. Councilman Cohen also explains how new design features, including curb bump-outs, raised crosswalks, and advisory bike lanes, are helping to create safer and more accessible streets. From environmental benefits to improved health and mobility for residents of all ages, this episode sheds light on how Princeton is taking proactive steps to promote active transportation and build a more walkable and bike-friendly community. So without any further introduction, let's join our host, Mayor Mark Freda, and his guest, Councilman David Cohen, for episode 64 of the Princeton Podcast.
David, thanks for being here today.
It's a pleasure to be here, Mark.
Appreciate that. So, David, the municipality, just officially launched the Vision Zero initiative. Could you tell us, some about that? What is that?
Sure. So we actually, as council, voted on it several years ago to embrace a Vision Zero approach. But we had a task force that was working on trying to figure out the best way for the municipality to act on that resolution. And that's what recently rolled out was a website or a web page that explains the initiative to the people and tells certain ways that people can be involved. And just to explain a little bit more about what Vision Zero is, it's basically a commitment to reduce the number of traffic fatalities and serious injuries to zero over a period of time. And the way that that's accomplished is with a safe systems approach. So it has to do with roadway engineering and trying to make the streets safer, but also education, helping residents understand how to be safe in the roadways and how to make sure other people are safe. Enforcement, where our traffic safety officers are out there and making sure that people are following the rules and making sure that we have good rules in place. And even post-accident, post-crash care. So supporting our EMT department to make sure that we have a quick response and that people are taken care of in the unhappy event that a crash does happen.
Yeah, pretty comprehensive. How can the community get involved in Vision Zero, David?
So I encourage folks to go to the website. The couple of actions that are listed there in the new initiative. One is using See Click Fix to report unsafe conditions that residents are aware of. This has been available for some years. I hope people are aware of this smartphone app, which allows you, if you're out walking and notice something amiss that the municipality should be taking care of, whether it be a downed tree or a pothole or a safety concern, you can report that in the app, and your smartphone will even tell where you are. You take a picture of it, share that, and it will get forwarded to the appropriate staff members. So one of the ways to get involved with Vision Zero is if you're seeing driver misbehavior repeatedly in a certain location, if you're seeing a roadway condition that you think is unsafe, for instance, people not having a stop sign where you think there should be a stop sign, or no right turn on red where you think there should be a sign to that effect, you can make those kinds of suggestions on See Click Fix. A second thing that we're asking people to do is there's a pledge to obey the traffic rules. And, this was started a couple of years ago by our previous safety officer, Tom Murray.
Yep.
I think that it really is meaningful. You know, a lot of us break the rules continuously when we're driving. We roll through stop signs. We think the speed limit is just a suggestion and not a rule, you know. And when I took the pledge, I just started thinking about that stuff a lot more consciously. Oh, and, you know, not using your cell phone while you're driving. I won't claim to be perfect. I catch myself going a few miles above the speed limit from time to time. But the point is to be thoughtful about it. And we have these really cool bumper magnets, Vision Zero bumper magnets. And if you take the pledge, you can get a free bumper magnet. So there's something in it for you.
There you go. I actually tried to put the magnet on my truck, but my truck's aluminum, so it won't stick to my truck. But it's a great thing to do.
Yeah.
What are some of the ways that Princeton is designing its roadways to help prioritize the safety of all road users?
So there are a lot of things we're doing. I think people should look at Witherspoon Street, the redesign of Witherspoon Street that's been implemented over the last several years. It's a good showcase for a lot of the things that we can do. Raise crosswalks, slow down traffic, adjusting speed limits where appropriate. We went from 25 down to 20 miles per hour on Witherspoon. Curb bump outs, which both shorten the distance for pedestrians to cross the street, and so that less time that they're in the dangerous cartway, but it also makes them more visible to drivers. The curb bump out lets them come right to the travel lane. And if you've got parked cars, especially, you know, SUVs, which are more and more obstructive of visibility, it really helps make the pedestrians more visible to drivers as well. So there are a lot of different things that we're doing, trying to create more roadway for vulnerable road users. And this is a pet peeve of mine, is bike lanes. People think because it just has the word bike means that they are only for bicyclists, but bike lanes are really an advantage to every user of the roadway because it gets bikes off the sidewalks and makes the pedestrians safer, and it makes the bicyclists more predictable for drivers. Yeah. You know, compared to if the bicyclists are sharing the lane with the drivers and sort of weaving in and out of the parking lane to help drivers have a chance to pass them. But it's really tough. And so bike lanes are a benefit, I think, to all the roadway users. And that's something we're trying to do around town a little bit more as well.
Yeah. I think it's pretty interesting seeing all the different things the town is doing to address all these concerns, whether you're in an auto, a pedestrian, or a bike, scooter, whatever.
Yeah.
But let's talk a little bit about the difference between advisory bike lanes and I guess what I'll call normal bike lanes.
Sure. Okay. So I want to just back up 1 second and say, as part of Vision Zero, I was participating in this Champions Institute earlier in this year. It was a 12-week program that was nationwide for elected officials to sort of do peer learning and technical advice about how to improve facilities for all roadway users, especially active roadway users. So we did this 12-week program, and we were supposed to come up with a project as an outcome of that. And what I decided I wanted to focus on was use of these advisory bike lanes. I had become familiar with them for my service on the planning board because the university has installed them in a number of locations around town. And it seems like a great way to share limited roadway real estate. So what an advisory bike lane does is it takes a road that's too narrow to accommodate regular bike lanes, as you're calling them, 5 feet on each side for a bicycle and, 11, 12 feet on each side for cars going in either direction. And it says, how can we share the limited road space if our road's too narrow for all of that? And by the way, parking is also a roadway use and can be included with these advisory bike lanes. So what the advisory bike lane says is we're going to stripe dashed bike lanes, very much like regular bike lanes, and we're going to narrow the part of the real estate that is for the cars that are driving in both directions. And what happens is that cars that are using that center lane going both ways, when they encounter each other, they can carefully look and see if there's anyone in the bike lane and move into the bike lane just to pass each other. And then they come back to the shared center lane. And the one other thing I want to say about it is that these are not always just for bicyclists. If we don't have sidewalks, they can be advisory bike pedestrian lanes. So for instance, the university put, I think, the first one in on College Road in an area where they had no sidewalks. And so the intent is very much to have space that's shared between bicyclists and pedestrians on each side, and the cars, again, restricted to that center lane for most of the time. And we're looking at doing that in some locations. As some locations where there's sidewalks, it'll just be for bicyclists, and other locations where there are no sidewalks, they can be for all non-car users.
David, just catching up on a couple references you made. You did talk about Vision Zero, and you mentioned our website, and you also mentioned ClickFix, the app for that. So I'm out there in the public. I've got no idea what you're talking about. Where am I going to access these two things?
Sure. The Vision Zero webpage is accessible through the municipality's website, www.princetonnj.gov. And if you just scroll down, it's one of the primary initiatives that's being promoted right now. So you can just click on the Vision Zero image, and it'll take you to that webpage. As far as ClickFix goes, really just go to any app store like Google Play or the Apple Store and search for ClickFix Princeton, and it'll come right up and you can install it easily on your phone.
Terrific. Great. So getting back, talking about Vision Zero and about the bike lanes and everything, how does all this benefit the Princeton community?
Yeah. So, I'm going to say that the advisory bike lanes are a great solution because they're relatively inexpensive, and yet they're providing real benefits for our non-automobile roadway users.
Yes.
So rather than having to widen the road to put in bike lanes, we can use existing roadway and just by striping, share that roadway in a safer way. So it has a safety benefit. As I mentioned, it's part of Vision Zero. It's got an environmental benefit because the more people we can get out of their cars and walking and biking, the less carbon emissions we'll have, the less traffic conflicts we'll have, the less traffic backups, and we'll also have healthier residents. So it's this sort of win-win-win-win scenario. It's part of an overall effort to enhance active transportation in Princeton.
Yeah. Pretty nice because it's really looking at things from a big picture perspective. So how do we fund all this stuff?
Well, again, it's a relatively inexpensive, not free, but a relatively inexpensive improvement. So we actually have funding to implement this on some streets, which I think is appropriate. It's not necessarily the right solution for all our streets, but we have funding for it in this year's municipal striping contract. So it's just out of regular taxes. This is something that is part of our public works, roadway maintenance that we do all the time. And it can be done as part of that effort.
Is there a hope for timeline to get more of these in place?
Yeah. So we were actually hoping to be able to do some of this actually this summer. We've hit a couple of hitches, and it relates to further questions further on down the list. So, but at this point, I think we're waiting till the fall so we can do some new traffic counts and speed monitoring to really ascertain which streets it's appropriate for. But in general, it's going to be considered for those roads that are currently designated as bicycle boulevards in our bike mobility plan. And so those are roads that are low traffic and low speed roadways. Those are the only roads that are appropriate for this treatment. You don't want people driving 45 miles an hour and coming up against opposing traffic without a dedicated place for them to drive. So low speed, low volume.
No volume.
And we're focusing at first on a network that especially helps to connect the schools and residents to the schools. So we're thinking of this as part of a real safe routes to school effort, trying to educate our kids to be comfortable and prefer the independence and the healthy effects and the environmental benefits of biking and walking.
Yeah. And quite a few of the students do actually bike, so.
They do.
Yeah. So kind of an obvious question. Has this been implemented elsewhere, or are other people using these?
Yes. I mean, so they have been implemented in a lot of towns. The research that I've done, I actually found a report from all the way back in 2017 identifying 12 communities where they had installed them and where they were evaluating their success. So it was done by, it's a white paper by a company called Alta Planning and Design. And what this was early days. I have to confess, in 2017, I had never heard of an advisory bike lane. So these towns were real early adopters. Princeton will be benefiting from their learning curve, I guess I'd say. At that time, though, they were virtually all 12 of the communities had found that they were operating as hoped and safely. And some were actually able to document that they had a traffic calming effect. So Edina, Minnesota, for instance, reported a 1 to 3 mile per hour reduction in the 85th percentile driving speed of people using the roadway. Other towns found not only that more bicyclists used the roads, but actually that less cars used the roads. The cars, chose alternate routes instead of riding on these roadways. So, so for those reasons, I feel pretty comfortable that it's been successful in other locations. I'm continuing to try and find more updated research because obviously a lot of time has passed since 2017, and there should be a lot more data about how they're working for the towns that have them already.
Yeah. How do we plan to get the word out about this project and encouraging people to take advantage of these once they're in place?
I'm 100% relying on you, Mayor, with the Princeton Podcast.
I got my blimp going over town.
Well, actually, I'm doing a lot of outreach. We're planning to be at various community gatherings like Community Night Out. I've been talking to the Walkable Princeton folks, and they're going to do a blog. We're going to be using social media. I've already filmed a little explanatory video showing people how to use the advisory bike lanes, and just waiting for blessing from our communications director to actually post it.
Yeah.
But, one of the challenges with this is I find explaining in words exactly what they are and how to use them. And so I really thought it was important to get a video because, a picture's worth 1,000 words and a video is probably worth 10,000. So
at least.
Yeah. So look for that. Hopefully there'll be a link to that on our Vision Zero page in the near future. And then we're going to be doing community meetings, neighborhood meetings as well. And that relates to one of your
which is, okay, so can you, help let the cat out of the bag and give us an idea where some of these advisory bike lanes are likely to show up?
Yeah. So I did talk about that a little bit already, that we're looking to put them on our bike boulevard network, and in particular to emphasize bike boulevards that are part of our safe routes to school, that are locations where we have a lot of users already trying to ride their bikes or walk to school. But there are other locations we're considering as well. So for instance, on Armour Road, the residents have been sort of concerned about cut-through traffic from Great Road or from Elm Road over to 206, cutting through Armour.
Yep.
And so we suggested, as a way to help the residents feel safer, that if we could put in these advisory bike lanes, bike ped lanes in this case, because they don't have sidewalks, it would give the residents a safe place for their kids to walk or for them to walk their dogs or, ride bikes to get onto the nearest side path. And we had a community meeting with the residents on Armour, and they quickly embraced the idea. They like the idea that it has a traffic calming effect as well. We've reached out to a couple of other roadways where they don't have sidewalks, where we think this could be a good solution as well, even though they're not on a safe routes to school. But we haven't managed to schedule the neighborhood meetings yet.
So people will find out before the striping appears on the street.
Yes.
If they're paying attention.
If they're paying attention,
of course, right. Not everybody pays attention to everything we do.
Yeah.
And then I imagine the installation of the bike lanes is fairly easy, right? I mean, somebody shows up and adds striping. I mean, the road it's not like we're closing the road for a day or two or anything like that.
Right. So, I'll just remind people, recently Valley Road was both repaved and restriped because of the PSC&G excavation work that they did upgrading our gas lines. The paving took a while, but my recollection is one day
striping.
There were no bike lanes, and the next day there were bike lanes.
Magically.
Yeah. So, they may close the road very briefly to allow them to put down the striping, but it's not going to be a big inconvenience.
Yeah. All right. So again, I'm sitting out there in the public and I'm like, boy, how do I provide input on what happens to my road with bike safety improvements overall? What do I do?
So with bike safety overall, the first thing I would recommend is to take a look at the bike mobility plan, which you can find on the planning department's website. It's part of the master plan, and just have a look at that map and see what's planned for your neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
Some neighborhoods are scheduled to get bike lanes. Some are scheduled to get an off-road bike path, like what's going in on Cherry Hill right now.
Yes.
Some are scheduled to just have shared lanes, bike boulevard with a Shero marking. So take a look at what's in the master plan. And if you need help finding it, reach out to me. I'll send you a link. And then if you have other ideas besides what's in that master plan, definitely reach out to me or to engineering to sort of suggest what you think would be a better solution. One thing I will say is that people do need to be patient, because one of the tenets of Vision Zero is that it needs to be data-driven, and we need to address areas with the greatest degree of safety concern.
Sure.
Our high crash network first. And so if you're on a street where we haven't had a crash, involving a bicyclist in the past 10 years, it's not going to be the top priority for receiving these improvements. But we still want to hear, if you have ideas that you think would be helpful, and particularly helpful. And then the other thing that I'll say is, when we are considering putting, say, advisory bike lanes on your street, and we do reach out to, and we'll probably be reaching out through one of your neighbors. So if if your street is being considered and there's someone on your street who's on the pedestrian and bike advisory committee, or who, is particularly active and concerned about these mobility issues, we'll probably reach out to them and ask them to organize a neighborhood get-together to have a discussion about whether or not your neighborhood is interested in receiving this kind of roadway treatment. But the other way that those neighborhood meetings can happen is through sustainable. Princeton has their Star Neighborhood initiative, which is neighborhoods that have gotten together to try and take all kinds of actions to make their neighborhood more sustainable. And doing these kinds of upgrades could be something that would help your star neighborhood rating. So if you are a star neighborhood, again, that would be, we would try to have a meeting of that group to get that kind of input.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's great. David, thanks for being here today. That was a lot of useful information.
Great. Pleasure to be here, Mark.
Thank you for joining us for the 64th episode of the Princeton Podcast, produced by the podcast production team at HG Media and sponsored by the municipality of Princeton. If you enjoyed this episode of the Princeton Podcast, please share it with your friends. Visit our website at princetonpodcast.com and be sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Podcasts, Audible, or wherever you get your podcasts.